We're live.
Okay.
Oh, and he's not here to do the intro.
Well, now I'm very envious of the Bill Caskey intro in the Advanced Selling Podcast. Hey guys, this is Australia's longest real estate podcast, MDA. That was a terrible intro. Tom Panos, John McGrath, Troy Malcolm. It has been 4 or 5 weeks in a row. We're Zooming it. Troy's taking the audio, podcasting it. Hey, everyone. John, Troy, what a week. 20,000 people. 20,000 people watched AREC.
Yeah, welcome to Australia's most disorganised podcast. We're delighted to be bringing this to you.
He says that, Tom, but it's been 6 years and our fans are still tuning in, so can't be too bad. Organised chaos. The chaos is the opportunity, though, Tom.
Jokes aside, that AREC Digital, which obviously was not necessarily by design originally, but by necessity as COVID forced us all indoors, I think the numbers, Troy, were close to 20,000 viewers, eyeballs, or sets of eyeballs, which is pretty exciting because we usually get 4,000 to 5,000 live, and we'll get that hopefully more next year. But pretty impressive, and we've got a few more to go. So feedback's been good. All the speakers, and I think we're going to have a bit of a chat about them, Tom. But no one let us down as usual at AREC.
No. So a couple of things that are coming out of Zoom webinars and Zoom presentations and the AREC one. And at first I had an impression that, hey, Kathy's going to run a PowerPoint. Kathy Baker was outstanding. She's never really done the speaker circuit. So this was really her first time talking to a lot of people. And she said, I want to do a presentation. And I'm always mindful that you can have death by PowerPoint. But I think that there's a bit of a nice formula. If you can somehow do PowerPoint, bring your personality in, and she did it so good where she was covering clients for life. She was outstanding. What did you think, guys?
Well, as you guys know, we get to see the chat line comments and Q&A, which not everybody gets to see. And, as I said to her on the day, what they used to say in radio, they used to say the lines have lit up, the panels lit up. And people were just raving about it, and I'm not surprised. Look, what did I get out of it? A few things. I got nurture marketing. Firstly, raving fans, which all of them that, but she makes sure that everyone has a delightful, thorough, great quality experience when they deal with her. So then you're starting to spread all of your good news through your network. Second was community. She's very big on community. Does a lot of. I love the thing that she did. Someone was moving out of the community and she had the little kind of 20 best friends and neighbours, and they had a little farewell party in a virtual fashion. I thought that was awesome. And the other one, I thought, Tom, was very, very basic, but You Inc., what I used to call You Inc., she had a vision, she had a plan, she has a great mindset. So as an individual, she is a very impressive person. So you've got an impressive person, fully engaged, that delivers raving fan service, follows up all her clients, past clients, and loves them for life, and then gets involved with the community. It's a pretty compelling proposition, isn't it, really?
Troisy, what did you pick up from Kathy or any of the speakers for that matter?
Tom, they were so impressive. I've got pages and pages of notes. They were all super impressive. And as expected, I think what John said, Kathy and yourself, she was the surprise packet because I don't know Kathy as well as what I do Tracy or Phil. And I had an expectation that they would be phenomenal, and they were. And Kathy just was the icing on the cake. Each one of them, Tom, I thought was interesting, delivered in their own style, but really had an impactful message. And I think that's the difference. It's very easy to be in an auditorium and deliver a presentation and be wowed in the crowd and audience. It's 10 times harder to actually engage with the audience when you're getting no live feedback. So for each one of them, Phil, Kathy, and Tracy, I tip my hat because they just performed exceptionally well. I love the way that each one of them developed a personal brand and a mindset around abundance. Each one of them looked at this COVID operation and where we are right now, crisis in terms, as an opportunity to build a phenomenal business, an opportunity to reimagine what business will look like post. And they're doing things now that are going to set them up for future success. So yeah, full credit to all of them. I loved it. I can't wait for next week, actually.
Yeah. So John, Phil Harris kicked it all off. He was outstanding. It's funny, about Phil, because you can tell his fingerprints are all over that business, because I did a webinar today for the 21-day program with Tom Hector. And it's always the same. These guys here, they've got a plan. Here's the plan. In the morning, they're going to have 20 conversations, and they're not going to sit there with this commission breath trying to get into someone's door. They're going to judge each call as it is. Some of these calls are now taking longer. They've accounted for that. The calls seem to go to 7 to 10 minutes, not 2 to 4 minutes, right? So Tom Hector, and that was the other thing I noticed about Tom Hector this morning. He had a beautiful office, and then I said to him, mate, your office looks fantastic. I said, it's good to see that Phil hasn't got you in a cubicle. He said, no, Tom, I've actually renovated a room in my home, and this is actually now my office. And I plan to actually work out of this room going forward. Even though I can go into the office, I plan to make my calls in the morning, and then I will go to my appointments, and I will go to the office later on in the day, but I'll wake up in my home without interruptions. And he actually looked like he was very calm, and he didn't have, you know, when you're talking to someone and they're in an office and you can just hear people screaming in the background, he says, I'm very focused, and I really enjoy the fact that there is no easy addiction to distraction for me. And so anyway, getting back to what I was saying, the template that Harris talks about is very simple. Have a good morning ritual, make sure that you do a lot of calls before lunchtime, have your lunch, and then go off, and whether it's a listing appointment, a buyer meeting, a vendor meeting, and you'll end up doing that 5 days a week. You've got a good week behind you.
Yeah, Tommy, look, many years ago, I talked about passion and process, that I think you need both. You need to have the great mindset and the enthusiasm and the energy and the passion, and that's what people feel when they meet you. But you've got to bolt it into a process and a system and a way of doing things that's efficient and effective. And I think Phil and everyone at Harris, really, you're right, the DNA runs right through the business. They have both of those things. And yeah, Phil talked about AM, PM energy. He said, look, now there's a certain amount of energy you've got in the morning, that cranks the day up, that looks for new business, and that's the proactive energy. And then you've got the service energy of dealing with things that come up in the afternoon. So I thought, yeah, mindset, passion and process, very, very critical. These guys, I mean, they're all style at Harris Real Estate, and you're right, they all have a plan. Nothing's left to chance, and they just nail it. And they're also very consistent through over the long term. You know, like Tom, you and I have known them for many, many years, many people in that business, and there's not much short-term thinking there. They're all about the long game and playing for the long game, being consistent. So yeah, very impressive.
Now, we're not going to forget about Tracy, because Tracy, again, indicated that she thought COVID-19 had made her a super time manager and a shifter of a lot of fluffy quantitative work into a more qualitative work, digging deeper in relationships with people that matter, getting intelligent about the way that she was spending her time. And she's been, I mean, there's another example of someone, form is temporary, class is permanent. There'd be very few years that she's not there at the awards night at the McGrath where she's not in that final 5 or 6. I know the way McGraths like to have it, where the face comes off and then you're left with 4 and then you're left with 3. She's always up there. Is that right, John and Troy? Top 5 or top 10?
No. Top 2, 3, 4, like always top 5. And again this year, although things heat up because we get new entrants in. We had Alex Jordan in Brisbane and some new people really starting to shoot for the stars. But yeah, you're right, Tom. I mean, she is just a class act. And what the memory she left with me is full of style and class, but full of energy and enthusiasm. And as I said on the day, a lot of people are bubbling and they're excited and whatever. But they're a little bit rough around the edges, but their enthusiasm compensates. And there's other people that are absolutely class act, but you kind of want to shake them and get them a bit moving. Tracy's got them both, and they were the sort of comments we were hearing on the chat line. It was people saying, love the energy, absolutely authentic. And for someone that's selling consistently $5 to $15 million properties, and I say this in the most positive sense, she is a proactive hustler in the positive way, not for self-interest, but she's proactive. She's ringing people up saying, Tom, you and Sue, would you think of moving? Because I've actually just come across someone that I reckon would suit your property perfectly. So she's not waiting for business to come to her, Tom. She's actually on the tear, creating business by making calls. So yeah, all 3 of them. Troy, I know you know Tracy very well. I've done auctions for her, but she just keeps getting better.
Well, the other thing that I loved about Tracy, John, and only echoing exactly what you said, the other thing that I loved about Tracy was when she was talking about the time management, she was focused on the really high dollar productive activities, and that was spending time one-on-one with clients at properties. So Tom having better conversations with their vendors, Tracy's vendors throughout the course of the campaign, but also spending more time with buyers. Almost like using the analogy of getting out the tape measure and measuring up where the fridge would go and would the lounge and the settee fit in the room, and does it work with the orientation, and can they have their in-laws come and stay? Like all those questions that we never get to ask during open for inspections. I know that Tracy, when she's focused on time management, it has a secondary effect of focused on high dollar productive activities and really getting to know the clients better.
And Troy, you and I both know that all good agents, by the way, are very strong on local knowledge, community and stuff. You know, that goes without saying. But Tracy, in terms of hyper-local knowledge, there is not a square metre of Hunters Hill she doesn't know intimately. There's not a business owner, you know, she's not close to. There's not a resident that she doesn't know. There's not a tenant that she doesn't know on the peninsula. So of all the people that I know, she would be as close to hyper-local knowledge, which Tom Ferry coined that phrase years ago at AREC, as anyone I know. So look, if you did nothing more than just look at those three, take the notes. If you haven't seen them, I assume, Tom, they can go to your Facebook site, can they?
Yeah, they can see it on the Facebook site. We've got it in the gym, but the easiest thing is they can just go onto the Facebook site and watch it. Next week, we've got Chauncey, we've got Josh Tesselin, we've got Lisa Novak. And yesterday, I did an interview with Jason Boone. Now, I'll tell you, and this is Jason worked for McGrath at one stage, didn't he?
3 times, yeah. He's a very dear friend, and he would be the first to tell, as he might have told you, he certainly speaks publicly, that in his youth, he was probably a bit like Matty Steinway, at one point attracted to the wrong crowd. And we had him, as I said, 3 times he was with us, and I love him to death, but he was kind of struggling with getting away from the wrong crowd of people and a bit of partying and so forth. And he went away and he fixed himself up exactly like Matt Steinway, and he came back a sensational person, sensational agent, and has been one of the best in the country for years.
Well, we went, John, on that interview, and I'm going to send it over to you, John, and watch it, because you're really, like, it's a really enjoyable interview because it's just a very down to earth. Now, we went through and we said, who is still strong in real estate after years and years? And he said, we're working through it, and we went, Pally is still there, and Jason is still there, and Matty Steinway is still there. And I kept thinking to myself, John, you got to be very proud, because it's been a bit of a factory of producing, you know. And then we talked about Shannon. I got Shannon Whitney on Friday. Shannon was from McGrath, Barry Goldman from McGrath. You've got to be proud to know that along the line, they played for your club. And not only that, they played for your club. It appears that they actually went through their development stages through your club. That's when they were actually growing and learning.
Alex Phillips, Debbie Donnelly.
Phillips, Debbie Donnelly. What about Georgia Cleary came up, and did she as well?
Oh, yeah, Georgie was with us from when she was probably, I was going to say 17, 18, straight after school to probably mid-20s. One of the best agents in the country. No, look, we're delighted, and I think that, you know, you never want to lose a good person, but inevitably you will, from time to time, have people who want to, you know, test their own arm in their own business. But yeah, no, it makes me definitely feel proud. You know, with the people we got today, I think 22 of the top 100 REB from our brand, and we got people like the caliber of Troy and Chris Maud who are there at the corporate level doing great work. So no, it is good. It's wonderful, and to see those guys. And the interesting thing you just mentioned then, Tom, look at Jason Boone, Michael Pallier, Barry Goldman, Alex Phillips. They're all very different people. It just proves you don't have to be male, female, young, old, tall, skinny, slim, serious, or whatever. That they all have very different styles about them. So yeah, just go and make it your own path. But they also have a consistency of the way they do business, and you know, they all have the customer at the centre of the transaction. They all have strong integrity, strong values. They all have a great work ethic. They're all great at telling the story and pitching for business. They're all incredibly resilient because they've all been knocked back many, many times. So yeah, no, it's really good. So looking forward, as Troy said, to next week. That's a great lineup with Lisa on there as well. Well deserved. Lisa, a relatively new entry as an agent to the market. She's obviously been a driving force between know that property's success, but as an agent in her own right, she's come out of the blocks flying the last 2 years. So that'll be good.
Okay. So Monday, 10 a.m., everyone tune in. You get 20 minutes of each speaker. And what I want to talk about today is a couple of subjects that are coming up now that we're getting some sort of normality back into the market. One of the things I want to come up is something that came up from an agent in the eastern suburbs, and that is, hey, Tom, I've got a property. I've done everything. We've marketed it. We are going through this period where there has been a bit of a lockdown, so taking buyers through. We didn't have the open for inspections, but we did market it. We've had buyers through, but we've got an owner that's not going to meet a price. In a marketplace at the moment where there's a shortage of listings versus previous years, and we know that that's documented when you look at CoreLogic RP data. So stock level has been down, even though the buyers have been there. What do? Do you hand the keys back to that property? Do you keep it and give it a run? It's a Sydney property. Do you give it a run now that there's more open for inspections? At what point do you actually say it's not going to work?
Yeah, it's going to be a different answer to every property. I think you've got to really get a strong understanding of where the market sits, and then figure out the gap. If the gap's 10%, it's probably closable. If the gap's 20%, it's probably not just hand back the keys, but let's look at a plan B. Right now, people are saying your property is worth 820 to 850. You're saying you don't want to sell under higher nines. I totally respect that, and maybe it would have been early to mid nines a few months ago. It's come back a bit. So let's look at the plan B. In the absence of being able to get the price that you're after today, would you prefer to rent it, sit tight, or represent it to the market in a few months' time when perhaps the market may well be at that level? So the issue, though, Tom, is I reckon that right now, my guess is the next 3 months there's going to be a burst of energy, and there's going to be great buyer demand and great listings in the market. Once the banks and the government withdraw some of the support mechanisms and infrastructure there, I think there is a chance that we might go through a few relatively quiet months. That doesn't mean we're going to drop 10 or 20% in my view, but I just think, there's going to be a great opportunity to sell now into a peak effervescent market in the next 3 months. So I would be probably, trying to get the vendor to understand, I'd rather be a buyer in 6 months' time than a seller, probably. I'd rather be a seller now, take a good price, cash is king, put in the bank and sit and wait, and then look at what happens second half of the year, because I doubt we're going to see a leg up second half of the year. I think we might see a slight correction down. And I think, at that point, you want to be there. Look, we don't, and most good agents don't ever sell bargains. That's not what we're in the business of doing. But there will be some stress and distressed sales that hit the market. And if you're there with your checkbook poised and your money in the bank, I think there's going to be good opportunity. So I would be sitting down with the vendor and saying, what's the plan B? Wouldn't you rather come springtime, be a buyer than a seller? Cash is king. And if not, I think you do go to plan B.
Okay, Troy, do you want to add any on that? And I also want to touch on, I maybe should have touched on it earlier. You can give us a quick round the grounds, just in case anyone doesn't know, because since we last spoke, there have been some changes by the states on what you can and can't do in terms of inspections.
Yeah, Tom, I think, John's 100% right again. The fact is that there's going to be a number of economic factors that come into play in a number of months. So while we do have a little bit of a sugar hit at the moment from a lot of the buyers out there, it's a great time for sellers. There will be a change that we see when those things start to be pulled back a little bit from the government. And you look further afield, some of the relationships between what you're seeing between America and China and all of those types of things, I will think come into play in the media a little bit, and that will make people hesitate in some regards. So the conversations that you're having right now are pretty important. In regards to this weekend, the announcement came from the New South Wales government that open for inspections and fresh air or open air auctions can be conducted again. Obviously, with the restrictions around social distancing, I think it's 2 square metres for internal and open air auctions or fresh air auctions. They can be 4 square metres. I would just say to everyone that's listening in New South Wales right now, just err on the side of caution. You don't want to be the agent that does the wrong thing. You don't want to represent your brand that way. You don't want to represent your personal brand in the wrong way. So take the right precautions, hand sanitizer, make sure that you've got multiple people helping out at the property, doing everything you possibly can. One question that I did get that was asked to me via a text message before we came on was, can we put out our open for inspection on pointer boards? Yes, you can. That's kind of back to normal in many regards. So you'll see a lot of agents do that throughout New South Wales. Now, the rest of the states, Victoria, they haven't had any announcement, but I would think that in the coming days, they will have something come out from their government, but they are still in the same set of circumstances they were previously. Queensland have had a little bit of a shift as well. So they can have a number of people, I think it's 6 people that they can have attend open for inspections. And again, erring on the side of caution, just to make sure you've got that social distancing, making sure that everyone that knows that when they inspect the home, maybe make the recommendation about not touching anything within the property and using those hand sanitizers and disinfectants to go around and just sanitize everything post-inspection, or restricting those groups as they come through. I think common sense does prevail here, Tom and John. I don't want anyone to go out there and go too crazy and then spoil it for everyone, because I think that's the risk right now.
Well, that's what the Deputy Premier in New South Wales, I couldn't stop laughing when he said, and by the way, if you're not seriously looking at buying or selling, we suggest that you don't go to the open for inspections. I was thinking to myself, man, this guy's doing great qualification. Everyone that's getting is actually been qualified by the Deputy Premier. Fantastic. So let me raise this issue, and that is one of the things that's come up with a few real estate gym members and general real estate community is, more important than ever, can you not rely on the marketplace just putting a deal together? More important than ever, you've got to have that good set to sell meeting, and also list property more on other reasons, and not, going in there and giving people too much optimism about what price they're going to get. John, we've had incredible feedback over the years on your approach about talking to an owner about why they should list with you and why the list price shouldn't be the big deal maker on which agent they pick. How would you touch on that these days, John?
Well, I don't think it changes much from normal times, Tom. I think, price should never be a reason to choose an agent, because price is the unknown variable, and there are some unscrupulous people that throw a big price out to try and lure in the listing, and others that just make mistakes. And the smart agents say, look, here are the comparables. Right now, yours probably fits in this consideration set. The buyers are going to look at it, compare. The best we should be doing is right now is just knowing what else has been selling that's similar, and we need to really put all our attention and time into the process and what can we do to maximise this. And I don't think it's changed, but you're right. There's no doubt if there is a hesitation or nervousness in the market, price becomes amplified as a much more important factor. When the market, is flowing along and it's really strong, people are prepared to pay a little bit more, knowing the market's going to catch up and surpass them in all probability. But I think, you've got to be careful. Just never paint yourself into a corner. You don't know what it's worth. Never promise you can't get something, but also never promise you can. Just talk about comparables, talk about the process, talk about, I can't guarantee you the price, but I can guarantee you the best process. Here's what it looks like. I think it's whether it's COVID or not, nowadays dealing with price is pretty critical, Troy.
Yeah, it has to start there, John. And, you can't, if you start the process on trying to get the cheapest or the highest price, it's never going to equate to a great campaign, because you're going to revert back to that conversation or that time in the listing every single moment throughout the course of the feedback. So it's not the right way to set it up, and it's definitely not a way that I would recommend anyone that's on this webinar to go about business right now. You need to be there as the trusted advisor. We've spoken about that today, and we need to be able to give 2 to 3 evidence-based case studies that are really going to show the vendor the potential that's out there in the market, but the reality of the situation as well.
I'll never forget my employer, John Ausnet from the Professionals at Padstow. He used to give me a process, and that is, after you'd listed a property and you gone for a week taking buyers, he used to get me to take the vendor and put them in my car, and we used to play a game, guess the price. And we used to go for a drive, and we drive by various other properties that had sold in the last 2 weeks. And he'd say, Mr. Vendor, what do you think that one sold for? And they'd say, 700? No, 650. And then you'd go off and look at another one. So you do, it was like, you know, that game, remember that game show where you had to guess the price? Name the price. And then you used to go back to their house and say, after you've seen those three, what are you thinking at the moment? There's something special about seeing is believing, you know, when you see it with your own eyes, which is basically comparable sales.
I used to do a similar thing, Tommy, you know, and take them, but I would try and always get them inside the property if possible. And sometimes you've just sold the property, it's empty, or even sometimes a vendor, if you ask them, would you mind if I took someone through just to give them a comparison, and assuming you did a great job, they were normally more than happy. So there's nothing like the reality of taking someone through a real live listing and showing them and saying that just sold for 650, and they say, wow, okay. You know, dealing with price, as Shane Smolin used to say, the best sales agent in the country is the mortgagee sale, because really that they set price aside, get the market through, and then the best price wins. Now, not everyone has that luxury. That doesn't happen with every sale, but you know, I definitely think that, you know, this is a time to make sure you don't commit. Don't be evasive, but you know, just make sure you don't paint yourself into a corner on price.
Okay, one final thing. As the states around the country loosen things up, and one would assume that people are going to follow what's happened in New South Wales in the next few weeks, I would expect, even though the Victorian Premier is known as being as very set in his own ways. Can I just ask, do you think the online auctions are all going to convert back to on-site auctions? Or what's your view? Or do you think that that's going to stay?
I don't think they'll take the place. No, I think most people want to be there at the property, seeing who's bidding, feeling the vibe. I think that online auctions will now be more popular because people have had a taste, and I think it'll complement. But no, I can't see it replacing at all the on-site auctions, but I do see them being used more often, especially obviously if you've got a buyer who's overseas, interstate. I mean, it's a much better experience than being on the phone, but I do think that the majority of people are going to get to the auction and going to want to actually be there in person.
Troy, what's your view?
Yeah, Tom, I think it's such a great piece of technology that's going to only help buyers that are overseas or just can't physically get there to the auctions post-COVID. I still think it's an important part of the process to have the ability and flexibility for those buyers that maybe don't feel comfortable going to the auction live in the current circumstances, to be able to do that online. So I actually think we'll be doing both for quite some time. But as an auctioneer, I'm biased because I love the fact when I can see someone's emotion, someone's connection to the property, standing at the property. That's where I get excited, because I know that the emotion says a lot more than what it does by looking at a screen and seeing a bid come through. I can help them achieve their dreams. That's my belief. But again, I'm biased because I'm an auctioneer.
All righty, listen, we've been going for 35 minutes. We're going to wind it up. We've had a big week of training. We're back in on Monday again, but I want to remind everyone that there are plenty of real estate people having very good periods of real estate. Tom Hector confirmed he did 9 sales for the month of April. Phil Harris confirmed they did 100 sales as a group. Tessalin, who's speaking on Monday, did close to 20. He did 25 or 26 sales for the month of April. Lisa Novak continues smashing it, doing her online live stream videos as her first point of media, and she's going to talk a little bit about what she does. But she's also going to cover, which is an interesting point, because when she's going to a listing presentation, there are other agents saying, but hang on a second, why wouldn't you just go straight onto the portal straight away? And she does go onto the portal. She just doesn't use it as a phase one. And she's going to talk a little bit about that, as well as any technology she uses to actually get those properties on. And Peter Chuancy, well, I think, he's either 1 or 2 in McGrath most of the time, between him and Matt Steinwade. And He's going to. Has he been, Troy? I haven't spoke to him for about 4 or 5 weeks. Has he been traveling all right?
He's been doing phenomenally well. He told me, you ask him what's happening in the market. He said, I'm still doing business. So we had Pete on a webinar not too long ago, and you can just tell him and his team are just on fire. Success leaves clues. So that's the great thing for everyone that's listening to this webinar and going to tune in on Monday. Lisa, Josh, and Peter are all going to deliver little bits of gold that you can go and action in your business straight away. And that's the difference between just hearing things that are, taking years and years to build. The people that we have on AREC Online, the Legends of Real Estate Part 2, they're going to give you skills that you can take away and implement Monday afternoon.
Well said, Troy Malcolm. John McGrath, good to see you again. We'll see you all on Monday morning at 10 o'clock. Then we'll see you on Wednesday for MDA. Signing off. Have a good week.